Good morning, everyone. Will those executive committee meeting members please take your seats? Morning. Good. You missed you at the retreat. Okay, everyone. The May 9th Executive Committee meeting is called to order. First, I'd like to ask our interpreters to explain how to access interpretation. Please go ahead. Interpreters, please go ahead. Are we having audio problems? Okay, thank you.
Announcement from the interpreter. To use interpretation feature, please scroll down to the bottom of the screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you're joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish logo in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you're in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples, who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, from 4 cultural groups, the Kumeyaay Digueño, the Liceño, the Cupeño, and the Cahuilla. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences and undoing the injustices of the past. Now, if you could please stand and join me in the flag salute. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Francesca, can you please confirm a quorum?
Thank you, Chair. We do have a quorum this morning. The only voting jurisdiction that's absent is the County of San Diego.
Okay, very good. So let's begin with non-agenda public comments. Francesca?
As a reminder, no comments shall use loud, threatening, profane, or abusive language that disrupts the orderly conduct of the meeting. Disorderly conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the executive committee meeting is prohibited. Per board policy, the amount of time allowed for each verbal public comment is determined based on the number of agenda items, the complexity of those items, and the number of persons anticipated to offer comment. This allows us to hear from as many people as possible and to complete our business while we still have a quorum. Based on those factors, the chair has determined that today's meeting, each member of the public will be allowed 2 minutes for their comments. Also, as a reminder, we don't use voting pads for executive committee, so please just go ahead and raise your hands if and when you'd like to speak. We have 7 public comments for non-agenda. And we will start with Truth and then go to Cesar Javier.
I just noticed I like the flag mix. There's no foreign country. And for the record, during my May 1st item 2 speech, I meant to say safe highways, not safe housing. The worst part of the treat was learning Bo Mazzetti died. That guy was a real one. Also, every attendee should have been offered a hotel room. I could have used it. The Hilton coffee was good. It had a hazelnut flavor. The two women from Neighbors for a Better California were awesome on the way out. They're like, yeah, that was great. And Lisa and maybe Joel brought up people going to the media with negativity on SANDAG in order to campaign. I agree, and I don't like campaigning, but it's the responsibility of every single person, in office or not, to speak up against all corruption, especially when justice can't be found at the board itself, which was the previous environment. With the current environment, I realize that the reason the ropes feel a little claustrophobic is because there used to be 2 entries and exits. Having only 1 exit seems like a safety hazard, especially with a ton of people in this building. Is there a way to fix that? I also noticed that there's no clock in this room. Why not? Can we get 2 clocks for each side of the room? And the screens are too far away, so the timer should be on the podium with the screen showing what item people are speaking to. And people over here in the hallway, they need to be quiet when there's another meeting going. And so they're not blocking our view of the meeting. I think staff should have a table on the right side of the room. They'd probably feel safer and more comfortable not having their backs to attendees and having to hear people scoff at some of their ridiculous answers. And staff being on the side would also make room for more seating, and the podium being behind the barrier in the center of the aisle to make it for safe and easy podium access. This is not hard stuff to figure out, and I wish SANDAG would quit making excuses for limiting public input and interaction. And Mike wanted to know if the old building's furniture was thrown away, donated, auctioned, or sold off to fund the new furniture. Why has there been no transparency with the building move? And lastly, SANDAG needs to stop giving money to Carlsbad for bike lanes. It's a dangerous mess with runners in the bike lane that's half open, half closed for construction that requires cars to drive in the bike lane and potentially hit runners in the bike lane. Make it make sense. This is nuts. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Cesar Javier, followed by Purita Javier.
Okay. Good morning. I am Purita Javier, victim of toxicity in RI residential zone designated community. A ceramics manufacturing and kiln home business was located, constructed, operated by the citizens 1984. From wood fuel, the owner converted it to gas fuel kiln in June 13, 2021, is still pandemic. He was also the time when we began formal reporting to the city county, air pollution district, and lately with SANDAG. It hurts. And up to this day, we haven't had a relief, not even a sign of hope, but merely palliative. They hear us perhaps. They hear us perhaps since, but nothing has been done to address the root causes. Number 1, Code Rule 11, which except 20 manufacturing, industrial, economics activities. One of them, ceramics kiln. Number 2, city and implementation of the rule, even of its hazardous one. Number 3, the applicant owner, a graduate of ceramics class in Mass College, whose landless
Thank you. Your
was
time has expired. Our
certified.
next speaker will be Cesar Javier, followed by allegedly Audra.
Manufacturing.
Finish. You may sit down now. There seems to be a San Diego City political virus. Beware. The city is being destroyed by starring 3 thinkers. The mayor, Councilor Lacaba, who was then the environmental chair, Council Rivera, who was then the president Council President. Sorry for my engineering English, but I assure you there is a punctuation mark. Corruption equals monopoly minus accountability plus discretionary. I hope Councilor Lacaba, who doesn't know about policing, or policing? No, I mean law and order. He doesn't know what is all about law and order. We attended every day this budget hearing. They do not know what is priority. They do not know what is crisis. How could they solve our issue, community issue, where 74 are relying upon us to convey this COVID political virus? They cannot, because they cannot even solve the victims who are supposed to be receiving something, cure, nutrition, name it. Air Pollution Control District is also another infected political virus. They're only for about business. Sir, CEO, I do not know what power could you do this. We take over air pollution permit. We do it according to its mission. Oxygen for all San Diegans. Sir Lacaba.
Thank you so much. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be allegedly Audra, followed by Paul the Bold.
All right, there need to be consequences for when you guys show up late and then push the meetings down the line and time gets pushed into other meetings. There needs to be something that happens so that you guys will be on time and not disrespect the people that you work for, which is the public. But it seems to be that you guys think that you work for yourselves or whatever. But something needs to be done about that because it's disrespectful. And Esther, where do you live? I would like to know, as you asked me at the meeting on the other day, and there's word that you actually don't even live in Oceanside. So if you do not, and you live in Encinitas or Carlsbad, and you only have a mailing address in Oceanside, that doesn't make you eligible to be in that seat. And so therefore, if that is going to be found out, I will expose that, and then you're going to have to go because you can't represent Oceanside not living there. And there's some serious concerns about what took place at her meeting in Oceanside, and it's taken places at a lot of the meetings, which leads me to believe that there's a question about what your guys' intentions are, and if you're willing to sow confusion and discord within the people by insinuating that you're making all people safe by putting up a pride flag, which actually has pedophiles represented on it. So there's no way children can feel safe in your community if you're raising a pride flag that is a glorifying sexual abuse of children, the rape of children. That is not just a sexual preference. And by sowing discord, it makes me question your ability to be up on a board and to be able to make sound mind decisions that are not going to sow confusion. And so when you guys are doing that, it's very disturbing to know how many people support pedophilia and don't have a problem doing it. Having children even. It shows that you guys are not able to do this job and something needs to be done about it.
Our next speaker will be Paul the Bold, followed by the person with the phone number ending in 672.
Paul Bold. News that the border highway connected to the planned port of entry at Otay Mesa is being demolished. Guess SANDAG and Caltrans couldn't wait until a new port of entry building was actually designed to see whether the connection to the highway works, whether it fits in architectural. Mario, do you know what's going on? Money issues, agreements with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and design flaws have been blamed for delays. A lot of finger pointing. No updated configuration has made a portion of Highway 11 obsolete, but guess who pays? We do. Whoever is at fault. Maybe next time let all of the competing jurisdictions agree on the overall building and connections plan before anything is built. But that's what the construction managers you hire do. The work to tear up the roadway is roughly $14.4 million. So while Caltrans, the California Department of Transportation, is grappling with the complexity of determining the original cost when it was built, we know that a few $1 million will be wasted. And reports are that the 5.2 magnitude earthquake on the 14th near Julian prompted the NCTD to temporarily suspend train service between Solana Beach and Sorrento Valley. To avoid this and similar closures, I suggest a train route going up the I-5 corridor to Oceanside, then following the existing light rail corridor through South Oceanside, then through the Duluth area, avoiding the homes, and connecting to LA, and the bullet trains are that way, with spur tracks to Campen and as needed.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be phone number ending in 672, followed by Blair Beekman. Phone number 672, you're self-muted at the moment.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So Consuelo here. Happy Friday, y'all. Okay, it is really a sight to see how this board, along with other boards throughout the county, are made up of people actually believing that they are really serving the people. There's no other way but to be brutally truthful. So brace yourselves. We all know that this SANDAG agency was initially supposed to only be taking care of the region's transportation planning. But over the years, it has morphed into a metropolitan planning organization that has their dirty, self-serving fingers in everything. It's an agency that contributes to the confusion and frustration of this current federal government system. It's an agency that, yes, look it up. It says it in any search engine that SANDAG is, in fact, an agency contributing to the United Nations agenda under the guise of sustainability. This body of representatives that serve on this board aren't in the business of helping anything. They aren't even listening to their own constituents and communities' concerns. One of you are even being recalled or in the process of it, Mayor Snow. The good part, the positive part, this system's corruption and greed are being exposed, and it will self-implode. So get on the right side of humanity and start by being honest with yourselves. You have to know by now that anything being done by this agency is not for the betterment of our county or of humanity, but it's to further have us be, I hate to use the word and sound melodramatic, but it's for our further enslavement. So there you have it. Happy Friday, and start reflecting and start knowing, start thinking, and really understanding that you're not doing any services to the people. You're just serving something bigger and uglier, and that is not.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our final speaker will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Thanks for the previous words from Consuela. You know, for me, working with the UN, it's tempting. I mean, they're offering something that can be so impressive, yet hidden in the background can be secret motives and agendas that become very worrisome and questionable. And that I hope that we can work at the local level to sift out exactly what those hidden agendas can be, and from that try to work towards, you know, the genuine fruit that is possible with good UN ideals and best practices. Good luck how we work on that together and develop best practices. It takes all of us to work on that. Good luck how we can do it, not just a select few. With that said, hi to everyone. I think the taxpayer oversight committee possibly was running a little late, is why you guys started late. The board of directors starts at 10:30 today. I'm going to try to keep my own public comment limited so other people can have public comment and speak, and you can have a quicker meeting. I was a little strong at my previous board of directors public meeting a few weeks ago, public comment time, but I did try to make an important point that I was really noticing that I felt it's SANDAG staff that are coming in a bit too strong in how they present projects and what their expectations are. I think they have to have a bit more reserve and a bit more of a teacher-student learning process involved, instead of just bulldozing way through what they feel will be the right directions to go. The executive committee chair today and the regular board of directors chair of the meetings, she did an incredibly good job to really explain what to expect for the future of the situation. I will take up one more public comment time to further explain myself. Thank you for the meeting today and all of our good work.
Yeah, that concludes the public commenters.
Very good. Any non-agenda member comments? Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a request to agendize converting 2 of our advisory seats to regular voting seats. 2 actually is better than 1 because it will keep us at an odd number, so we won't if we had a tie. Anyway, so I've been talking a little bit about the unincorporated areas having a voting seat. I think it would also be prudent if we considered our tribal nations. We have 18 of them here in the county. I think it would be important for them to also, because they've got very unique needs that many of us can't even begin to understand. So I would like to have that agendized so that we would have the discussion about adding the 2. And I do know that it would need to go also to the legislature probably, but I'm not certain of that. I think we would probably need a legal opinion on that. But if that's the case, if we do support it here at the board, I think it would be something that we could get our delegation to look at and help support.
I'm supportive of that. It's been a topic that people have been bringing up in various corners of this table. So yeah, let's look into that and have our independent counsel also take a look at if we would need legislation and all that. So we'll put it on the calendar as we can get to it. Any other member non-agenda comments? Yeah. Okay, I see none of those. So let's move on to consent. Do we have public comments on consent? And please remember, public commenters, to tell us what item you're speaking on. Francesca.
Thank you, Chair. We have 4 public comments on consent. We'll start with Truth and then go to allegedly Audra.
I support Rebecca's item 0 idea. Item 2, the minutes continue to say that the county no-shows these meetings. Why haven't they either been censored or removed yet? And item 3, the June Friday the 13th agenda looks strangely good. The May 30th agenda for item 8, I expect fact and force. The May 23rd agenda's consent looks a little bit stacked. I actually think item 9 about public engagement events for the regional plan should be a discussion item. Why? Because SANDAG's past outreach has been abysmal. There were tens of thousands of our tax dollars spent on gelatos, sodas, tacos, and agua frescas to get people to buy into projects, concepts, and plans that would harm communities. That's called bribery. And not a single piece of feedback from non-busted political minions was actually included within the regional plan. So I want to see robust discussion on what's going to change and how it's going to change, because it must change. I'm glad there's going to be discussion on the security technology for the OME border crossing, the first ever non-federally created border crossing in American history, contrary to what Tara Loss of Reason has claimed, which is why this project is being pushed so hard without proper mitigation required by law. It's also pretty pathetic that the negative environmental impacts continue to be swept under the rug while technology, an inanimate object, is prioritized. And is this future technology discussion why SANDAG just wasted $10+ million of the federal grant to tear up the newly paved SR 11? After destroying Caltrans's concrete, Mario, how much will it cost to then fix everything? Because that money could have been the mitigation fund. See, this is misplaced priorities. This is how things get messed up. And then people get mad and there's lawsuits. The SANDAG fraud, waste, and abuse is just continuing. But the positive is this OME project, it truly is doomed to fail. And that will be a win for the environment, for people's health security, and the country's national security, as CBP will not be wasted, and Mexico's environmental terrorism will not be financially and politically enabled by SANDAG and the taxpaying residents of this county anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be allegedly Audra, followed by Cesar Javier.
Talking about your draft agendas, have yet to see anything about mitigating fire risks from all the things that you guys are implementing for your whole United Nations, agenda that you guys love to implement, which is enslaving the people. And it's great that you guys pretend that that's hocus pocus, which again, then leads me to believe that you guys are not equipped to be up there. If you're not going to be telling the people what you're really doing. Just be transparent. I mean, then they're understanding what's happening and they can't say anything about it. But you want to act like you're not implementing a 15-minute city enslavement plan and not giving people the means to evacuate when there's a fire so that we have stuff that happened up in LA happen here. So if you guys aren't taking it seriously, we shouldn't have to wait. This should be an emergency type of thing. And when you're dealing with the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry in Mexico, what you really should have done, instead of going we're going to give you your own little trust fund to put the money in, you should have said you're paying us back for all of the money that we've spent due to your negligence and your unwillingness to make sure that your plants are in working order, because we, the people, should not be having to pay for that. And the fact that you're willing to give them more money, they're never going to fix the problem. And that we're going to still spend more money from the people to fix the plants that we have. Doesn't matter how much money you spend on it. Until Mexico fixes the problem, we're going to still be spending our money to do it. And you guys aren't willing because all you care about is the commerce that comes from Mexico. And you don't care that the people are spending their hard-earned money on that, to just continue to waste it. It's literally fraud, waste, and abuse when you're just it's like pooping in a tub and then just I don't even know. It's ridiculous the way that you guys don't really mitigate stuff, but you act like you are. And it's sad because you don't care about the people that are working hard so that you can be sitting up there and doing all this stuff, all these shenanigans that you guys do.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Consuelo, followed by, Cesar Javier, followed by Consuelo.
Cesar Javier, a community volunteer, a curious learner. The minutes, excuse me, I think I know what I am doing, ma'am. I'm sorry. I speak to represent 74 of my fellow residents, citizens, residents. And how many of these hard-earned gold dusts have been used for its purpose? We have been speaking here, non-agenda, any item in here, like the minutes. Thank you, SANDAG. Our names, Cesar and Purita, were etched there. Patrimony for us, something to be inspired of. Thank you, SANDAG. How I wish that those issues, tidbits, are resolved in all minutes. Sir Lacaba, listen. Don't spread the political virus here. These are revered thinkers. I think that's in the minutes. On the particular item, review of draft boards, with the vision of the CEO, which is non-political. He was not elected by the people, but he was appointed by Uncle Sam. And most of the members here are also fresh professionals and thinkers. I know that on these political thinkers, there are patriotic and brave thinkers. I can name them. We saw them work. And I think that's still within the bounds of this draft board agenda, ma'am. We are all learners. If I commit a mistake, it's only my passion to say to you that we are doing good, better, best. And this is a journey from us.
Thank you very much. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Consuelo, followed by Paul the Bold, and Paul will be our final speaker.
Okay, amen to that, Mr. Javier. We are all learners. That is so true. I love it. Great words to like hopefully absorb and marinate in over the weekend, y'all. With that being said, okay, meeting minutes. Here we go. More stuff for the public that the public has to look up and listen to. That's pretty disappointing. So question, is SANDAG so understaffed that it cannot provide proper minutes? With that being said, I'm going to again encourage all of you people claiming to represent your constituents to actually have your constituents be present, participate, know, lead them, guide them to where they need to go, whether it be on YouTube or these Zoom calls. I mean, have them be involved. You know, it'll make your job easier. People will be less, inclined to want to attack you and have you not be recalled. Also, it just, it shows that you do want to be transparent and you want change for our county. And that's all I got on this. Hopefully I was on topic. But who cares? I'm done.
Thank you. Our final speaker will be Paul the Bold. You can go ahead.
Paul Bold. Thank you, Mayor Jones. I too feel that the entire county should have a voting representative. Draft agendas, May 23rd. Looks like we'll have to wait and see what actually went on at the retreat. Who snored or slept through that early 8 a.m. meeting during the retreat? But seriously, I hope MTS uses the TDA funds for actual transportation, or they might be yanked. And I think you should give the financial report before you pass the budget. Long meeting. 5:30. I think you should abandon the weighted vote or give East County its fair share. I'm glad that there's an audit of the sole source stuff. It's so abusive and wasteful. The audit should have been done before the budget. I'm sure you can find a lot of savings. June 13th, the TDA audit should be done every year or so. If there's something you could do better, why wait 3 years? And we should have a report on the back office system every meeting until it's done. Keep it on track. And as for the meeting minutes, back to the list of names like the Oscars and who did what on the consent calendar, which was consented to. Surprise! Anyway, it's disappointing that that the public has to look up and pretty much listen to everything that actually did go on to find out. And I wonder if SANDAG is really that overstaffed that it can't provide proper minutes, like Consuelo said.
Thank you very much. Your time has expired, and that concludes the public comments on consent.
Very good. Any member comments on consent? Mayor Duncan.
Thank you. I just have a basic question. I'm wondering if, I don't know, maybe the CEO or maybe the chair may know. So we've been receiving emails from members of the public about, moving a pot of funds away from certain freeway connector projects, et cetera, onto, I believe, other mass transit projects. Is that, to your knowledge, in a specific item in one of these future consent calendar board of director agendas, or is that?
No. We'll be dealing with that at the board meeting next when we were talking about the budget. That's what it was addressing, the budget. And so I'll make some comments and we'll go from there. But this was an organized effort by some young folks. It's not coming from within the board or from staff.
Great. And again, I'm not even trying to address it. I was just curious as to when. So you're saying at today's board meeting we'll be dealing with it?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
I'm happy to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Very good. May I have a second, please? Second by Jones. I see no other comments. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, that passes unanimously. Now let's move on to our report, which is a legislative status report. If our staff could please come to the table, and our guests. I think we have a guest virtually. Okay.
All right. Good morning, Executive Committee. I'm Stacy Cooper. I'm a senior planner on the Sustainable Communities team, and I'm here with my colleagues, Jose and Sam. And the League of California Cities is also joining us. We're here this morning to revisit a few items that came up at the board retreat during the RENA discussion, SB 423, good faith efforts, and current housing bills. Before I jump into SB 423, I'm going to pass it over to Sam, who can speak to your questions about RENA potentially being considered an unfunded mandate.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sam Folk. I'm with the Office of General Counsel. I wanted to keep it brief. I know we're a little behind today, but I do have some background if there are questions later. But in short, on the issue of RENA as a state mandated program, in a 2005 decision, the Commission on State Mandates actually rejected the unfunded state mandate claim for RENA. The reasoning was that cities, counties, and councils of governments have the authority to levy fees for reimbursement of the RENA costs. And if later you have any questions, I'm happy to go into more detail, but I think I'm going to turn it over to Stacy now to do an overview of Senate Bill 423.
All right, continuing with the good news. So as we discussed at the retreat last week, RENA used to simply be a planning exercise, and now the state is holding jurisdictions accountable. SB 35, which went into effect in 2018, requires the availability of a streamlined ministerial approval process for eligible developments in jurisdictions that have not made sufficient progress towards their RENA. SB 423, passed in 2023, extended and amended SB 35, including expanding the reach to qualifying developments in the coastal zone. We could pull up a slide and I can explain a little bit more about what the affordability requirements are. All right, so as you can see up on the slide, jurisdictions with insufficient progress towards their above moderate RENA are subject for developments with 10% affordability or above. This also includes housing elements that are out of compliance and jurisdictions that have not submitted their most recent annual progress report. In our region, we all have compliant housing elements and everybody has put in their APR. And then for the 50%, it's for jurisdictions with insufficient progress towards their lower income are subjected at least 50% affordability. So the current reporting period for SB 423 eligibility is the end of the 5th cycle, and all of our jurisdictions are currently subject at 50% or 10% threshold. And I will pass it over to Jose to talk about our advocacy efforts.
Good morning, committee members. At the direction of the board, staff has been exploring opportunities to advance the principles outlined in its 2024 letter to the California Legislature's Housing Committee chairs, and to address the challenging effects of housing streamlining efforts on our local jurisdictions. In particular, SANDAG is currently working to identify legislative options that would provide waivers to jurisdictions who have demonstrated good faith efforts to plan and permit the development of housing. In other words, we are proposing that if jurisdictions can demonstrate that their inability to permit or approve their full RENA allocation is not due to acts or omissions that are arbitrary, capricious, entirely lacking in evidentiary support, contrary to established public policy, unlawful, or procedurally unfair, then they would not be subject to the streamlined ministerial approval process provided by SB 423 and SB 35. This good faith standard is currently codified in California Government Code by Senate Bill 1037. This was a bill from 2023 by Senator Wiener. The statute authorizes the Attorney General to seek civil penalties against local jurisdictions found to be in violation of state housing element or streamlined approval laws. To ensure that these penalties are reserved for the most egregious violators, Senator Wiener amended the bill to apply only to jurisdictions not acting in good faith as defined above. SANDAG staff has also shared the SB 423 waiver language with the Governor's Office and the League of California Cities. Although our efforts have not gained traction within the governor's office. Our partners at Cal Cities have been able to provide some insightful feedback on our proposal. And at this time, I'd want to introduce our two representatives from the League of Cities joining us today. One is Catherine Hill, who's our local representative, and she's here in person. And also Brady Guertin, who is the housing legislative advocate for the League of California Cities. Brady will be providing us with an overview of the state's housing policy landscape and a recap of key housing bills working through the legislature. Brady, please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Brady Guertin, and thanks, Jose and SANDAG, for the invitation today. I'm the legislative advocate for the League of California Cities up in Sacramento, and we represent the 483 cities across the state of California. And my role is to do housing, community, and economic development policy. So I work closely with this organization as well as several other organizations up in Sacramento around housing policy and stuff like that. Very excited for the opportunity to present about some of the things going on, as well as our sponsored bill, which I'll get to at the end. But I first wanted to do kind of a step back of kind of what's the dynamics in Sacramento? What are we looking at for housing policy, just for awareness of kind of how debates and discussions are going in Sacramento? Because one of my job is to represent our city's perspectives on housing policy and our board of directors, and really look at all the bills, the thousands of bills introduced every year, and figure out how they're going to impact our cities. So before I get into some of the specifics, let me just take a step back about kind of what the dynamics are and what we're looking at. So in Sacramento right now, so the legislature has a supermajority Democratic election. So we have about 60 Democrats in the California State Assembly and 19 Republicans. And then in the California State Senate, it's 30 Democrats to 10 Republicans. So, you know, you're looking at a kind of a one party that's been has control of all the executive offices as well as the legislature, which makes it a interesting debate because there's always different perspectives because they represent everyone from California. You know, with housing, one of the big things that we've seen, especially this year, there was a couple bills that were working through the process, but there's been a really big split in Sacramento between what is the state's role in intervening on housing policy. Is it the state's job to do to really implement affordable housing or market rate? How do we look at that? So you're seeing like this dynamic split that you have up in Sacramento, ideological differences across the board. And in the last 10 years, really, there's been a really big kind of pendulum swing where there's been a lot of push to streamline things. A lot of bills that we've seen that eliminates public engagement and CEQA review process for housing. And on top of that, you're seeing, you know, a reduction in impact fees and a bunch of other stuff. There's been a lot of efforts. There's hundreds of housing bills introduced every year. I know local governments are doing their best to catch up and stay up to date and comply with the state law. But what you see is, you know, a couple trends over the last couple of years. Last year, there was a big focus on accountability. You know, in the view of the state, one of the challenges they see as addressing the housing crisis has been the permitting process for local governments, impact fees, the cost of housing. There's a lot of stuff that they're looking at. So the legislature has really looked at ways to kind of hold cities accountable, as they would say, and also look at ways to reduce the cost of housing. And one of the problems is, you know, uncertainty in the development process. So last year, there was a big focus on several bills that Cal Cities was actively engaged on that really looked at holding cities accountable. You know, one of the big ones was the builder's remedy, which allows the developer to come in if you're not certified and you're past your deadline for a housing element, which is your plan for housing, to come in and basically build wherever they want regardless of your zoning codes. So there was a big push to really, this has been in law for 30 years. Last year, there was a really big focus on trying to provide more certainty or clarity in that process. So there was around 3 or 4 bills that was looking at this issue. And it made it clear that your housing elements, which for those that don't know, is when your local governments plan through public engagement sites for housing. So we get, at the local level, you get a number for housing, set number determined by the Department of Housing and Community Development, as well as the COGS, who work collaboratively to distribute the allocation and the number of sites that a local government have to plan for housing. And again, that's a plan for housing. So when you go through that process, it can take multiple years to do that for some of our communities because you have to get approval from the state. You know, there's a lot of factors that you have to look at. You have to do affirmatively furthering fair housing. You have to determine sites that are viable for development in the next 8 years. And it's really challenging because for local governments, they can plan all they want, but if there's not development, there's nothing we can do. So when you look at, you know, some of the efforts like you guys were talking about with 423 and 335, where they're looking at reaching those, you know, the checks on how cities are doing. I mean, the reality is local governments don't build housing. We can only plan for it and provide resources for developers that come in the community to build. And that is sometimes out of the local government's control because there's several other factors. You got land values, you've got prevailing wage requirements in some instances, you've got inflation rates, you've got a bunch of variety of things that can be really challenging for development. And the legislature has really focused on ways on trying to bring down the cost of housing. And I will say, you know, one of the challenges up here, especially, you know, representing local governments is, as I mentioned, you know, kind of kicking off this thing, the split isn't necessarily looking at should local governments have more power or not. It's more, where does the state's role in intervening on affordable housing, or is it market rate? What development do we drive? So it can be really challenging up here for local governments to get, you know, local governments are doing their best to address the housing crisis and do what they can and balance their community needs. It can be really challenging in Sacramento when you're seeing kind of a lot of infringement on this land use authority. So what happens is we take years to get our housing element certified, and then the legislature comes in with new laws that basically says, I know you've done that, but that's not enough. Here's some more, you know, ministerial by right approvals. That's been a very common refrain here. So what you see, so I say all that just to show kind of what the dynamics are. You know, as I mentioned last year, the focus was accountability with this housing elements for cities that aren't doing it. There's fines that are now really high. There's a variety of the builder's remedy punishments. There's a lot of stuff that there's been a lot of focus on kind of punishments and not as much, you know, kind of incentives, right? I mean, you have some with the pro housing designation, but it's a really challenging dynamic here because there's obviously a housing crisis, but it's trying to find that balance that we're trying to work through, and that Cal Cities has an active role in trying to balance what the state is trying to do while also ensuring that our local governments have their voices heard and have the ability to plan for what's best in their community. This year, the focus has really been affordability. That was a big response to what happened in November with the election. So you've seen a really big focus on affordability this year. And one of the big packages is a bipartisan 22 bill package that's looking at streamlining. And this is looking at everything in the post-entitlement to the entitlement permit. So, you know, your planning area, but also your building department area, as well as a variety of other things. So that's a big issue that we've been very engaged on up here in Sacramento, working collaboratively with the legislature. You know, the legislature has always had an open door policy in hearing Cal City's perspective. But again, with the dynamics that we have, it can be really challenging to, you know, kind of find that balance at times. But we do our best to work together and try to find common ground, and also, you know, account for each individual community that are so different across California. I will also say, I'll wrap up with one thing that we're doing. I threw out a lot of info about the housing element process and stuff like that. One of the challenges a lot of our cities expressed was the sixth cycle, which just occurred, was a lot of challenges of trying to get approval. You know, HCD has a lot of staff turnover. They have, you know, a lot of kind of lack of clarity in some of their guidance of what you need to do. And our cities need to get certified to, you know, avoid the builder's remedy and fines and stuff like that. But it takes multiple rounds of back and forth. It can be really confusing. So what we did as Cal Cities was took a step back, talked to our members to figure out from local governments, what are some of the challenges that you guys experienced in the sixth cycle, and how can we look at a legislative process, through the legislative process, to make it better for the upcoming seventh cycle, which I know for this COG and a lot of the other bigger COG starts in the next couple of years, and trying to just make sure that we can have the ability of the state and local governments to get housing plans certified and approved on time and ready to go, because that's going to create more certainty at the local level. Because the reality is once you get your housing element certified, it's really challenging because of all the state laws to deny a housing project once it comes into the community, if it meets your general plan and zoning requirements, if it has affordability regulations. There's a variety of things, but the long-term goal is to ensure that we have good plans so local governments have the ability to plan for and cite for the housing requirements that is being put on them, and to ensure good, smart residential development in their communities and growth. So that brings us to, I know, this action item that this executive committee is looking at, which is Assembly Bill 650 by Assemblymember Pappen. And it's a sponsored bill by Cal Cities. Does two things that's really important for local governments. One, it gives our cities more time to do their housing elements. So we would move, if it gets signed into law, the deadline to get your regional housing needs allocation number would be pushed up by 6 months. So that way cities would have, instead of less than 10 months to do their housing elements, they would have 16 months, give or take. And that's if it goes through all the appellate process. The second part that the bill does is look at the, is when you get a review letter from HCD. As I mentioned, one of the challenges we faced at the local level was kind of unclear guidance. We'd have the ability where cities look like they're on the right page to get certified, and then in the 11th hour, we'd get new requirements, which would then require us to go back to the community or city council and get it approved. And what that second section of the bill does is say, in those review letters in the 7th cycle, HCD needs to be more clear and specific and tell cities exactly what they need to do to get certified. So the goal of that is to reduce that kind of back and forth that we saw in the 6th cycle. It was really challenging with a lot of the new requirements that's been placed through state law, and just providing that certainty and reducing that ambiguity in the housing element review process so cities can get certified on time. So we are proud sponsors of that bill, encourage this body to adopt a support position as well. It's been going through the legislature positively right now with bipartisan unanimous support. It went through the Assembly Housing and the Assembly Local Gov Committee, and now it's in the Assembly Appropriations Committee and will be heard next week. So we definitely urge this body to provide a support position. So thank you again for the opportunity to discuss some of the issues going on in Sacramento, and I look forward to answer any questions or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brady. We will go to public comments at this time, and I implore the public to please keep your comments concise. It's 10 o'clock. I'd like to get to board discussion so we can get to some meaningful action on this very important item. Francisca, could you please call the first speaker?
Thank you, Chair. We have 5 public commenters on this item. We'll start with Truth and then go to Cesar Javier.
Sure, guys, it's fault we're late. The league does not represent me or any cities. DOT says DEI needs to DIE SANDAG. Have you gotten the memo yet? Sean Duffy said Biden's backlog of 3,200 unobligated grants, along with irrelevant climate, DEI, and social justice requirements, delayed critical investments across the country. SB 35 and SB 423 are pervert wieners work, one of those crazy system Democrats, Joe, that some of you have allied with, including Joel, who admitted so at the board retreat. Wait till you see Wiener's SB 634. At some point, some of you have to admit that you've been on a side that's been killing this state. Every opportunity that most of the rest of the country continues to enjoy. It's not a housing crisis, it is a political crisis. Change all the bad pro-corporate developer, anti-single family housing policies so people don't have to keep leaving this state in mass exodus. I'm going to be one of the next people before you know it. And 2 years ago, I was hoping the state stack-a-pack smart city colonization would unite everyone, and it seems it's finally starting to. But why did so many of you wait until areas like Claremont were destroyed? You went from towers and now you're waiting for skyscrapers. Is that because of political pushback from within? Because if some of you would treat those crazy policies like the weighted vote and walk out on your own party, maybe things would change for the better. Try it. All we have is campaigning, like for the gutted SB 10. Joel for Bill and Franklin, Jim for himself, Paloma for Paloma, and even Tara for Paloma. SB 10 would hijack our toll money so the federal government would not have to allocate money to the treatment plants. But no money would even make its way to any plant because all the toll money would first pay SANDAG's 40-year debt. I think both Steve Padilla and SANDAG knew it, and that's exactly why it was rewritten, to remove the restoration of the Tijuana River Valley, where so much of the pollution sits festering. That's why the city most affected, Imperial Beach, has denounced SB 10. The only people who support it are Steve Padilla and his ally Paloma, who voted against real solutions to side instead with Mexico. We actually call that treason in law. How dare anyone call her a supporter of fixing it? She's not. She's a whiner, complainer, not a fixer.
Our next speaker will be Cesar Javier, followed by allegedly Audra.
Cesar Javier. I had opportunities to build shelter from Lintu. Oh, by the way, from a Boy Scout shelter we call tent, Councilor Laqaba. Thank you, SANDAG, for that opportunity to learn. We are all, whatever branches you have, like our attorney here from Harvard. I am from Harvard too, but my main university is University of Life. It calls for simplicity. Simple, Councilor Laqaba, Councilor Rivera, Councilor Foster, a contractor, Councilor Campbell, a doctor who knows what is safe, and you know that, Councilor Wilport, Councilor Campbell, Councilor, name them, there are 9, and they are not in accord with what the state is all about on housing. I say this because I have lived in my city for 12 years. And I tell you, it's a political virus that is a problem. Leadership, which we have been tackling here many hours. I know that the chair now here is aiming for a Senate or Assembly position in Sacramento. This is a stepping stone, Mom. We are encouraging the 100% density bonus program. Sir Laqaba, Mayor Gloria, you co-sponsored this again and again. Lesson learned. It has never succeeded. The more people who are sick, the more people are dying. Sorry, political virus,
Thank you so
city
much.
of
Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be allegedly Audra, followed by Blair Beekman.
Concise. How about you guys keep your comments concise? You go on these diatribes. It's ridiculous. Then you silence the people. It's whatever. If the housing wasn't a racket, there would be provided housing for the people. People wouldn't be moving out in droves. If you guys cared more about, providing the housing as opposed to saving the planet, we're going to save the planet. And we're going to have everybody be homeless in the process. It'll be cool, all right? We're going to take up all this open space, put everybody really densely populated. That's going to help the air quality, right? It's just funny because if you really cared, you would actually provide it. You wouldn't be like, listen, we got to check their vehicle miles traveled. We got to really make sure that this is in a 15-minute city. Let's take up all the open space and preserve that for frogs. And then, we're going to make sure that, if people have to get out in a fire, they're not going to be able to. But it's cool because we have a depopulation agenda. And it'll be fine if they die. If you guys were really transparent with the people, and you should be fine, but the thing that sucks is that it's just going to come from us. We're just going to pay for your negligence. But it's just, it's just sad because there's literally people suffering. And if it wasn't a racket where you would be like, we're going to make it affordable, it's going to be a few units in there. People are going to believe that they can go get it. We're going to make them pay to do an application. And then we don't really ever have to fill those affordable housing spots. But as long as those people get also market rate, then they just, we benefit the developers. It's good if they're your friends, right? And you're just like, yeah, hey, come just pretend to put this project in. We're going to call it affordable. That's such a joke. Affordable to who? Someone on the streets, you're like, we're going to get you off the streets and we're going to put you in $1 million home. Just the shelters that you guys provide them, little tiny homes, cost so much money. Oh, if it wasn't a racket, you'd actually be helping people.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Blair Beekman, followed by Consuelo.
Hi, thank you, Blair Beekman. I'll try to be concise with this item. As to conclude my initial public comment thoughts, non-agenda public comment thoughts, I'm learning that, I'm trying to offer the ideas of learning how we can parse different rail systems through the Lausanne corridor, or I want to address the federal spending issues that they want to possibly reinstitute federal funding dollars for rail programs again. And with that, I've been trying to describe the importance of parsing out our future rail in San Diego County between the Losan corridor and East County, and what that can mean to learn how to do that. I know it's a bit of a stretch to learn how to ask for that and talk about it, but I hope we can make that creative stretch and want to talk about it more. And to really thank again the words of the Board of Directors chair, who really very nicely explained that there is possible upcoming funding for certain portions of double tracking the Losan corridor at this time. Now, I think that's an interesting idea in and of itself, that I wish we can kind of stay there, and that can be a permanent solution. We don't know that yet, but you're going to try it out and see what, a partial double tracking can do. I think that would be a much healthier permanent solution to address our rail issues to the Losan corridor, and how to address environmental concerns, housing concerns. I think it's a great way to go, and I don't know if you guys want to make that permanent or not yet, but I know you're thinking about it, and thank you. I didn't make that clear last time. I didn't understand that fully last time. Now I do. I just hope it can be partial double tracking, I think, is the important goal, and you're working on that now. You're considering it now. Thank you. Good luck in our efforts.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Consuelo, followed by Paul the Bold, and Paul will be our final speaker.
Okay, Consuelo here. So, so instead of having someone from Sacramento coming here to read a novel about permits and government-made crises, you could be way more concise by just having your presenters summarize their speeches. How's that? Not to mention adding to the harmful carbon footprint coming all the way from Sacramento. Anyways, acquiring permits, that reminds me of the question, who did the government buy the land from? Oh, that's right, it was forcibly acquired, stolen. Therefore, I am obliged to remind you of this simple fact. No one owns the land. No one owns anything, silly Homo sapiens. The blind being guided by the corrupt, power-hungry blind. There is no housing crisis, but there is a definite lack of transparency and truth crisis happening, along with a greed crisis and the whole obtaining certificates, becoming certified and approved nonsense. I mean, how can something be denied when it's supposed to be helpful? It just goes to show you it's not. It's just more of a racket, more junk. Happy Friday. I'm finished.
Thank you. Our final speaker will be Paul the Bold. You can go ahead.
Hi, Paul Bold. AB 423. Who should I SMAP, since SANDAG shouldn't be involved in RHNA, period? AB 650. The main issue would change the lead time for a housing needs assessment from 2 years before revision to the housing element of the general plan to 3 years before, and also to allocate this need among its members. This would mean a general plan based on older and probably less accurate data. It might also result in the placement of new developments in less appropriate places. For instance, in 2 years, more might be known about where a new mall providing jobs might be built, and transportation to that site might be planned more accurately, resulting in fewer, quote, empty buses or trains. I appreciate the exclusion of Section 7, which seems to be gripes as to what various agencies did wrong. However, the overall effect is contrary to SANDAG's transportation mission. SB 10 allocates funds received from the Otames East project to IBWC, which is a federal issue. SANDAG should not be funding federal projects, particularly when they're in the process of clawing back already allocated funds for transportation, like DOT actions towards Amtrak and New York MTA. See the letter attached to the Peter Pizer report. I guess you'll have a few seconds left, each quick before the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. And I want to thank our presenters very much for being here, and especially Cal Cities for making time to come here. And Brady, I've got some questions for you. So if our staff could put his face up on the screen, please. I really appreciate the efforts of AB 650. I think we all are on the same page, without question, that RENA needs reform. This is going to be helpful for the 7th cycle. I especially appreciate the two things that it does, which is more of a timeline, and secondly, that there's some certainty once we have one staff member, hopefully from HCD for each city, and not changing staff members, over the period of time, and that we get, it sounds like you're asking for more certainty for what it would take to get certified. Is that like, do you have like a list or something, or is it just some concept that they have to provide specifics? I would really like to see an objective list is what I'm would most prefer.
Yeah, good question. I know that was one thing we had discussed when we were talking with a lot of our members and our planners about it, and we know that that would be helpful. I think our goal with the bill, that clarity, because of the staff turnover, obviously we can't control, staff leaving and stuff like that, but hopefully, with the review letters being more clear in the process, that'll give you guys the ability at the local level to understand exactly what needs to get certified. So if you do have a new reviewer come in, you guys already have kind of like a foundation of what you're looking at. So I know it's not necessarily an objective list, but I think it'll provide that ability for you guys to better understand kind of what HCD is looking for, because the goal is to just be clear on where we're missing the mark. Because I think in the 6th cycle, and you probably experienced this at the local level, it was just one of those things where you would hear one thing, but then you'd have a verbal discussion and be like, oh no, I meant this. And so we want to just have more writing, because obviously, HCD has a really challenging job. There's not necessarily standardized training about that, and every city's different, right? So you're looking at different things, but hopefully that clarity, that specific direction and text and analysis will help provide you guidance as you keep moving forward, as opposed to having like later potential changes. That's kind of what we're trying to get at with the bill.
Okay, so two things that I'm wondering if you consider adding to the bill at some point. I'm not sure what the sentiment has been in Sacramento, but one would be to add a new category for housing elements that are submitted, but HCD hasn't gotten to it. That period of time, we're all vulnerable to builder's remedy. And it sounds like what you're saying is that Sacramento thinks that's a really great place, because woo-woo, then we get all this of building. We don't think of it that way. We think of it as a real threat to our cities and quality of life. And as we all know, most of those new housing units are definitely not affordable. So can that category be put into your bill to make a request? Is that reasonable to ask for?
Yeah, so I'll touch on that a little bit. So originally what we were trying to do in our bill before it got amended in the first committee was for builder's remedy to provide exemptions where if you got new stuff later or you were going through the process, you would be exempt from builder's remedy if you were past your deadline. And now builder's remedy only happens if you're past your statutory deadline. So the goal is to ensure, because if you submit, let's say 8 months before your deadline, right? Then HCD gets back to you. You still have 5 months left because they get 3 months to review. That builder's remedy wouldn't be going on until you hit that deadline 5 months later. But I will say, so going back to my larger point, the builder's remedy stuff we had put in for the bill to keep moving forward, we had to pull it out. And I think there's this appetite because it was just put into law last year with 1893 and 1886. There was a really big hesitation of the legislature revisiting it now this year. So, and it was Senate Bill 457 also was looking at something similar, and that bill didn't even get enough votes. It only got 1 vote in committee and died. So I think it's a really challenging process. We were trying to find a good balance where it's like, hey, if you're working with good faith, you should get exempt from it. If you're getting new stuff later, you should have the ability to respond first before it commences. And unfortunately, it wasn't good enough for the legislature to take that. And we think the timeline and the specifics is definitely the main goal. But the builders army stuff would have been a great addition. But unfortunately, there just wasn't an appetite for that, despite our best efforts.
Okay, and so what about our language that we proposed for the good faith effort as the standard of review for the mid-cycle reports and other reports?
Yeah, so I know, appreciate you flagging that because I know Jose had sent me it. So, so with that, the challenge with that is because of kind of where we're at right now with the legislature, it's going to be a challenge for that to get through, and we just don't want to put anything because of how our bills have been moving. We don't want it to go in this year. However, I was talking to Jose yesterday and I was saying that, I think it's worthy of a conversation. One of the goals we want to do and one of the messages I've been trying to get across to the legislature when we're having these discussions has been, hey, you guys have focused a lot on sticks over the last 10 years. How can we provide some incentives or carrots? So maybe you look at a route where it's, if you're a pro-housing city, you get an exemption for that.
No, I don't want to be a pro-housing city because that comes with more
but
streamlining. Yeah.
I'm just saying that in general, we're trying to look at other ways, like tools in the toolbox, I guess, to provide some incentives for cities that are doing their
There's some
darndest
give and
work.
that we could talk about maybe for future, whatever.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. Happy to have those conversations for sure.
Okay, all right. And then, I really think that our board is in alignment as it came out in the retreat with, we really need a lot of changes. And in many ways, we feel like our delegation is not completely representing us. And so what I would like to do, before we get to the action item today, and I'm going to add another action item, is to discuss a third action item. And that would be for us to put together a letter of what our desires are, as how we would like to be represented in the housing space. With some of these items that I just mentioned, that you're feeling that there isn't the listening for that in Sacramento at that point. But the fact that we are all pro-housing and we're all looking to ways to find more places in our communities that can house people that, are lower in income. And that at the same time, what Sacramento is doing is their approach is not getting there. On the ground, it's looking very different. We all have our stories, but I know in my city that since 2017, I have fewer affordable places for people to live in Solana Beach than we have after all of the building that we've done, because everything seems to demolish the old and build new shiny ones, which are super expensive. And then that raises the comp rates in the entire community. So I'd like to put together some sort of a letter that we could bring back to the board and send that then ultimately to our delegation, with the ultimate goal of going to Sacramento with as many board members as we can and meeting with our delegation and speaking with them about, what we're seeing, what they're doing that's working, what they're doing that's not working, and then working with Cal Cities, because I'm really happy to hear you in this position, Brady. It sounds like you really understand the cities very well and the mission of Cal Cities, which is to promote and enhance and advocate for local control. Again, we're very interested in the same goals as the legislature seems to be, but they're getting there kind of the wrong way. So that's one thing that I'd like to do. The other thing I'd like to do is talk a little bit about SB 79. Cal Cities' position is a flat out oppose on that. SB 79 was written up a little bit in our staff report. SB 79 allows up to 7 stories at 120 dwelling units an acre at a bus stop or any property, train stop, any property that a transit agency owns, without regard to your zoning, without regard to your general plan or your housing element. And it doesn't even have to be housing that's built there, let alone affordable housing. It could just be, Costco. I was talking to Kat a little bit and I told her I think that SB 79 is looking at density bonus and saying, hold my beer. That's basically where I'm coming from on it. So I'd like to have staff take a look at that, do analysis, and come back with maybe a letter also to consider for oppose. But I will now open it up for the rest of the committee, Mayor Jones, and then we also would like an action item to approve a support letter for AB 650.
Thank you so much, Chair. As you know, I've been a very vocal opponent of against all of the taking of local control. It's been extremely frustrating. And for a city like mine, where we have almost 11% of deed restricted affordable housing, and yet there's more and more and more, it's like we're bursting at the seams, and we really need to just have some sensibility. We are pro-housing, but we want to do it in a way that fits us, not the state of California. And all of these housing bills are, I mean, really 7 stories. Come on. I actually, I think I mentioned at our last meeting, I have a situation where there is a 6-story building that is proposed in a neighborhood that is single family residential, single story, might I add. And already the street is overparked, and they're going to put in 40 parking space for 160 units. These bills do not work. So I'm all in going to Sacramento, because they need to understand. And I actually want to bring some of my residents that don't yet actually know that this is coming in their neighborhood, so they can hear from everyday citizens. I mean, I'm an everyday citizen too, but everyday citizens, that this would impact their quality of life so substantially. So anyway, we already in the city of San Marcos did oppose both SB 79 and AB 650.
You supported AB 650.
I'm
you mean
sorry,
677.
supported. Yes.
And-
We're opposing what they're doing, but yes,
Yeah.
we're already supporting anything that is local control. We're 100% in. So my motion, I would make a motion to move forward with this today, as we did at my city council level. We've got to stop it somehow, some way. And, we've talked about this, Chair, you and I, about our neighborhood voices. My city council actually did support that back in 2021. It did not get on the ballot yet, but it still stands as a resolution. So anything that we can do here at this board, I think the strength is in our numbers, but we've got to take our communities back. Our residents are relying on that. So anyway, those are my comments.
So would your
Thank you.
motion be
Yes.
to also give direction to staff to analyze SB 79, come back with a potential letter of
Yes.
opposition, and also to write a letter encapsulating, starting with the letter that we did last year, encapsulating our belief sort of in the region? I think we can generalize that.
Absolutely.
And then we'd bring that to the board, and then the votes would maybe hopefully include their signatures. And then we can also, second step would be get to Sacramento.
Absolutely. And
okay.
and when we get to Sacramento, when I've got almost 11% deed restricted affordable housing, I think I should get a pass on everything. I should get the golden ticket of no mandated anything being allowed in my city, but that's another discussion anyway.
Very
Thank
good.
you, Chair.
Mayor Duncan, we have a second from, it was a Minto? Very good, thank you.
Thank you. One other concept I just wanted to briefly mention is one of the most idiotic things about the just absolutely stupid and ridiculous experience Coronado had with HCD is that it was literally impossible for us to comply. So I don't really hear anything from you or any real effort to potentially solve the sort of concept, the doctrine of impossibility for cities. Meaning, is there any kind of ever in lieu type thing we can do on one of their rules? Because when HCD came down and toured Coronado, their incredibly helpful and idiotic response was, oh, you need a legislative change. You literally can't comply as the city. It's like, thank you, HCD, for telling us we can't comply because we don't have half-acre lots owned by the same parties. But if we put together 4 lots owned by different parties and agree to do low-income or housing there, it won't comply and will still be out of compliance and potentially subject to builder's remedy, and really not builder's remedy because there's so many other restrictions from the federal government and other state law that really nothing would get built, but we would be fined regularly. So what we had to do was hire all kinds of consultants and negotiate and back channel with the state attorney general to get the attorney general to sue us so that then we could file a settlement with the court to bless, which didn't comply with really HCD and state law rules at all. Is there any effort to do anything to help cities be able to actually comply or maybe actually have some housing when the rules that HCD and these awesome state lawmakers set forth don't actually allow any building? Like, we need some kind of like escape hatch where we can negotiate with HCD, not to get out of our responsibility, but to put forth another solution that will comply with what they're asking for, but is outside these like ridiculous impossibility rules that they foist on us.
Yeah, so my understanding of your question, correct me if I'm wrong, is just looking at, is there other routes where if you can't meet those numbers that they have, for example, is there routes
No,
that
that's
you guys-
definitely not my question.
Okay.
It's when their requirements are impossible for a city to comply with. Can we set forth legislation for an alternate, negotiation or procedure where HCD has the ability to flex the rule if it gives the same result? I mean, it seems like such as basic common sense, but HCD's position is that's impossible. They're not allowed to do that under state law.
Yeah, that's I think it's a good question. I definitely would love to have a discussion about that. I don't have anything at the top of my mind right now off the cuff. There hasn't been any, legislation that I've seen looking at that, but I think it's worthy of a conversation for sure. So I'm happy to chat with you about kind of some routes for that and see kind of what you guys have in mind.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. I'm not trying to overly put you on the spot or complain to you, but I was trying to make the point. So maybe we could add something like that.
Sounds good. Any other member comments? Mayor Sanchez and then Mayor Minto.
Thank you very much. I am really very sad and disappointed that we cannot we are being told that we should not add language regarding waivers to jurisdictions acting in good faith. That is like pretty devastating to all of us here, I think. And despite the alleged focus on affordability, this Sacramento movement is creating the exact opposite, making our cities even more unaffordable. We actually have excess units downtown on Coast Highway that are empty because they are not affordable. And I'm talking about, this is a unit of 309 units downtown, that about half. It was built, it was received certificate of occupancy probably 2 years ago and still empty. So we are churning out these approvals like nobody's business, but they're not getting built. And I imagine part of it is, financial uncertainties, but at the same time, we don't have the need for these kind of units. And I think that's what we're saying is we all here are for affordability. But what is happening with this movement, it's devastating our cities. So we need to be all together on this. We need to really pretty much demand in the nicest and really harshest way, both ways, always, that we want local control. And show me one city that really, especially in San Diego County, that is not committed to trying to house all of its folks, including homeless. And that's another thing too, that RENA to include housing our unhoused. How are we supposed to do that? These are unfunded mandates. So I just want to say we need to stand together, SANDAG and our League of California Cities for San Diego region, and we need to do this here and then also ask other regions to join us because we have to change this. Otherwise, what's going to be left of our cities? Thank you.
Kind of an interesting exercise.
And our diversities, by the way.
Yeah, it's an interesting exercise to go on apartments.com and check out your city. It's very, very, very interesting. Mayor Minto.
Really quick. A lot of people, I think, especially maybe watching, don't even know what League of California Cities is. So I wanted to say real quick.
As a board member, please go ahead.
And there are, well, I am a member. Full disclosure, I'm a member of that board of directors also. But the League of California Cities was created in 1898. They were an advocate for cities in California who were being trampled upon by state legislators, and same way we are today. So the fight has never stopped over 100 years later. And they do not actually write legislation. What they do is they find a legislator who's very helpful to us and to the cities, and will propose language and then ask them to carry a bill. So we don't actually write legislative bills per se, but we do advocate in that area. And as far as the good faith, a great example of a community that does their best to do the housing and meet the RENA numbers, and then they get sued every time there is a development that comes forward, and that takes maybe 2 to 3 years. So you're always 2 to 3 years behind on any kind of housing that you can do. And so if they don't take that into account, and then you could be, fined by the state government, and that's nothing more than just a way to get money out of local communities. And so I think, that's why I second the motion, because this is absolutely needs to be addressed.
Very good. All right. So we have a motion and a second on supporting AB 650, looking into SB 79, and also writing a letter to generally to encapsulate our feelings on the board of support of affordable housing, but that the method that the state is going about is not working. And ultimately, we'll get ourselves up to Sacramento. Hopefully, the entire board will come. And we will speak to our delegation and let them understand exactly what it is that we need representation on and how. All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? No. All right. Thank you so much. And I really, really appreciate all your work. The unfunded mandate thing is kind of crazy because I don't know what my city would bond on in order and I know it wouldn't pass as a tax measure. So that's a little bit insane. Maybe we need to revisit that. I also appreciate the league, the Cal Cities is no longer the league, and really would welcome your partnership in our efforts up in Sacramento and hopefully further in other COGs. Alrighty, so we are now at the end of our agenda and we have no continued comments, right?
We have no continued.
Okay, so we're adjourned.